Welcome to the pod. I am Chris Graham going solo today. We're going to talk some UVA sports news, particularly focusing on the contract offer sheet that I finally got back from UVA. Made a request a while ago through the Freedom of Information Act, public records request to get access to the contract extension that Tony Bennett was announced to have signed on June 13th, day before the College World Series. Turns out, looking at the contract offer sheet, it was signed on June 13th. So um, they didn't take any time getting that information out. We'll talk later, probably tomorrow, about Bron O'Connor, who also signed his offer sheet on June 13th. So, and they were announced it that day. Trying to rush to get some news out. I don't know why that would be the case. I do know why. So I worked for weeks to get access to this information. Then I got scooped on my own story. Another reporter wrote that he was given the information through a release. I didn't see the release with anybody else, so that's interesting. But any case, uh, the I'm just looking actually to see. Yeah, no, there was no there certainly was no press release that I ever saw. But any case, uh, I was looking for a couple of things when I got this information, because, the backstory of this is I've been writing about Tony Bennett's contract situation for a while, dating back to May 13th, and actually explored it first on May the 6th. The background there was even a few days before May 6th, I'd caught on to some discussions online, social media, and elsewhere about Tony Bennett's contract status. There were people making what they claimed were informed claims that Bennett had been offered a contract extension, turned it down, and that he had 2 years left on his deal. And uh, as a news reporter for going on 30 years now, it occurred to me, well, I don't have to engage in speculation. University of Virginia is a public agency. I can simply request the information through FOIA and get the information if I needed to go that route. But first, I went to the media relations folks at UVA Athletics and said, "Hey, what's going on? There's people out there talking about, Tony's contract's up in 2 years. He's been offered an extension." Um, and turned it down. And the media relations folks told me you're going to need to FOIA that. So okay, that's um, that's what I'll do. And what I got back was a copy of Tony's existing contract, which indeed confirmed, I guess, actually everything that had been speculated. So here's one where I was actually thinking, man, I'm going to debunk what all these smart A's on social media are trying to say, which is that they know more than anybody else. I want to, in fact, point out that he has either more time or that there's an extension in the works or et cetera, et cetera. The answer from the UVA FOIA office, they gave me a copy of the contract, which was a 2015 contract with amendments in 2017 and 2019. Nothing had been signed or put to any kind of paper from 2019 on. It did run out in 2026. And as to my question regarding any contract extensions, there was no records responsive to my request. Um, so that was that. And that then made me go into the questioning of, all right, there were then follow-up theories being put out there by folks on social media that perhaps Ron Sanchez, who gave up his head coaching job at Charlotte, took a pay cut to come back to Virginia. Maybe he was going to be a coach in waiting. And so I FOIA'd the contracts of Sanchez and Jason Williford and Tony Bennett's other assistants. And, what jumped out there was Sanchez's deal was actually 1 year longer than anybody else on the staffs, including Bennett's. So that could make you believe that Ron Sanchez was given some sort of most favored nation status. um, I did reach out to UVA to ask the UVA Athletics Media Relations folks to ask if Tony Bennett and or Carla Williams would like to comment on all this stuff. Both through intermediaries got back and said, no, we don't want to comment. Um, we fast forward from there to a story by Mike Barber in which Mike Barber called me fringe media for speculating. This is not speculation. This was all factual based stuff. Okay. So, the only speculating going on was by a guy named Mike Barber calling me fringe media, suggesting that I wasn't doing my job. He wasn't doing his job. He didn't do any of this work. He just got a email, phone call, attaboy kind of thing to say, hey, we got something in the works. And that was on June 11th. 2 days before the June 13th announcement that Tony had signed this deal, even though he just signed the deal on June 13th. The effective date of proposed extension was June 1st. So, I started inquiring into this on May 6th. I wrote my first of several stories on the topic on May 13th. On June 1st, UVA Athletics and Tony Bennett finally get something to paper, and then it's signed on June 13th. So I was right about that. And it's just because of the reporting. It's nothing right about I did, nothing I did that was jumping out there. And if it takes fringe media to push the buttons here, then I guess, maybe we need more fringe media and not mainstream people who sit on their butts and don't do anything except for write about what other people write about. So as it turns out, yeah, I want to now jump into the a very important part of the story, which is, all right, so the guy who wrote about this yesterday, the same guy who wrote about me being fringe media, also wrote a story, and again, he had his story posted before UVA responded to my FOIA request, so that's what they think of me over there, which is fine. That's just part of the game. Um, and I kind of see it felt like coordination. I don't know if it was, but it felt like coordination because the story that got out before I even got the answer to my FOIA request, which I've been waiting for several weeks, uh, he tried to frame the narrative as Tony Bennett's not getting any more money. Well, that's not the most important part of the story, but I will address that part of the story. Tony Bennett's compensation, yeah, is still 4.02 million. It's not going to go up during the term, which will go through the end of the 2031 season. Assuming everything in the contract's met. There's just 2026, there's a 1 year rollover added on if Tony's still coach after the 2026 season. I think a big deal was being made in the framing of the story by Mike Barber that boy, Tony, I mean, he's not asking, he didn't get any more money, and thus, I mean, I think the implication was he's underpaid. As far as we know publicly, Tony's the highest paid coach in the ACC. Now we know, this isn't public; it's not confirmed information. But when you do a Google search for what John Shire at Duke is getting paid, Duke is a private school, doesn't have to report its, those kind of details, the granular details of what it pays its coaches and that kind of thing. But it's widely known that he makes north of $7 million a year. So Tony's second in the ACC, which is still, I mean, second in the ACC. That would put him in the top 20 nationally. For comparison's sake, Shire's program, Duke's revenue, and this is according to Duke's own website. They do brag about this, but I guess I would too. They brought in $47.7 million for their basketball program just in the last year. We have numbers for 2022, 2023. 47.7 million. Virginia brought in 18.2 million. So Tony's getting paid 4 million for a program bringing in 18.2. Shire between 7 and 8 million for a program that brings in close to 3 times that. When I looked at the other numbers in the ACC, the one that jumped out to me as a guy who probably needs to fire his agent and start over is Hubert Davis at Carolina. Hubert Davis has been to a national championship game recently. He's making 2.6 million a year. The Carolina program, the most recent numbers we have for what they make, their men's basketball program makes $31.7 million. So about double what UVA brings in. And he's getting paid a good bit less than Tony. So so to make it out that Tony is underpaid, probably not accurate. Also jumped out at me is the buyout. Okay, so usually when we think of a college coach, and it's usually football or men's basketball, we think of buyouts. We think of, all right, what happens if we fire the coach? Usually this is in football, honestly. We think, oh, what happens if we have to buy out our coach? If we have to fire him and buy him out? Texas A&M had to do this with Jimbo Fisher, a lot of money. But there's another side of the buyout. What if the coach leaves early? We don't talk about that as much, but there are, generally speaking, there are contract clauses that deal with that. Some coaches don't even have a buyout. Most do, and a lot of them are prohibitive. Tony Bennett's is pretty small, $250,000. If he leaves at any time during his deal, it's a $250,000 buyout, but basically he pays the university to quit early on his contract. Now, that's a change from where it had been in the past. I looked at his contracts for 2015, 2017, 2019. His original deal signed in 2009 kept him there through the end of the 2014-2015 season, and then he signed an extension in 2015, and then amendments to that contract in 2017 and 2019. That was the one he'd been working on until he signed this new extension. A lot of back and forth there, I know. But the 2015 contract originally called for a $3 million buyout if he left before March 30, 2018. And then the 2017 extension put another year on that to make it March 30, 2019. The 2019 extension then lowered the penalty to $1 million if he were to step down before the end of that season. So that wasn't much of a penalty. And then it went down from there. So it's now at $250,000. Just for comparison, I thought it would be interesting to point this out. $250,000. If Brad Underwood at Illinois leaves, and if he leaves for any job or leaves for any reason, it's 15.3 million if he leaves early. So if he leaves for another college job outside of the Big Ten, and I'll point that out in a second, or if he leaves for an NBA job, he owes the school 15.3 million. If he leaves for another Big Ten job, it's 30.6 million. He ain't leaving. He's finishing that job out. Let's just put it that way. That's what that clause is there for, from Illinois' perspective. If Nate Oates at Alabama just led Alabama to the Final Four, right? First time, maybe first time ever. I'm not sure. It was, if not, it was first time in a daggone long time. If he leaves in the next 2 years, he just signed a contract extension this offseason. If he leaves in the next 2 years, he owes the school $18 million. $18 million. If John Calipari, who just left Kentucky, now John Calipari did not have a buyout at Kentucky in the sense of if he left early, he would pay the school any money. He got money back if he got fired. They didn't fire him. He was basically told to quit, and he quickly got a job at Arkansas. So he did not have a buyout when he left Kentucky, but voluntarily. I'm putting my air quotes up there. But if he leaves Arkansas at any point in the next 6 years, the duration of his deal, he owes Arkansas $6 million. Again, Tony owes Virginia $250,000. I'm not going to cast any thoughts as to what this all says, but it's just not a lot of money if he leaves. That's really almost nothing in the context of how much money Tony Bennett's made in his career and that kind of thing. Especially, I mean, if he were to leave for another job, and I highly doubt that he would do that, and I certainly highly doubt if he were to do that it would be for another college job. It would almost certainly, if he were to do something I'm saying he's not going to do, but if he were to do that, it'd be for the NBA. He would only pay $250,000 to do that. I can't imagine if he were to just retire. And this is just me, I've read the contract, I've read the language. If he just retires, I can't imagine UVA is actually going to ask for that money. Contractually it says it's there. But if he just retires, again, I don't know that they would enforce that, but that's what it is. That's what it says. As far as anything else in the contract, and this is all in a story that I've got on the website. I'll link them. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll link it. I'll put the links there. If you're listening on the podcast, your podcast app will have it. But the flip side of this is he gets 4 longevity bonuses, and these are interesting things. Man, I wish I had this kind of thing. I'll work for myself, so I would just be paying myself out of my own money. But if he's still the coach at UVA, March 15th of next year, a $400,000 longevity bonus, just basically a check for, hey, thanks for still being here. March 15, 2027, then he gets $1 million. So that's $400,000 in 2029, and then another $1 million if at the end of the deal in 2031. So $2.8 million just in addition to his $4 million plus salary. And then also these performance bonuses. And again, you're already paying the guy $4 million a year. If you're paying me anything close to that, you don't need me to work any harder to do these things. But $400,000 for a NCAA title, $250,000 for a Final Four or Elite Eight, $100,000 for a Sweet 16 ACC tournament title and National Coach of the Year. So hey, let's just say, you get an NCAA title, National Coach of the Year, ACC tournament title. That's $600,000, and another $75,000 for a top 10 finish in the national poll. So $675,000 if you do the 2019 all over again, right? And then there's a $50,000 for an ACC Coach of the Year award. So hey, $725. Have a really good year. $725 on top of all this. Top 15 finish or an NCAA tournament appearance. That's kind of a low bar. And then $25,000 for a top 20 finish in a national poll. So, I mean, there's money there. There's a good bit of money there. And again, all these details are on the Augusta Free Press website. Again, I'll link to them both in the YouTube description and in the podcast description, just so you can, see it. Hearing me talk about it, you might have some questions about the details. In any case, that's the situation with Tony Bennett. I want to break down Brian O'Connor's deal, also signed again on June 13th, and reported on June 13th. We'll do that. I'm thinking tomorrow. This is Wednesday when I'm recording, so I'm thinking Thursday we'll do this. I've reported on this already on the AFP website. The quick on that is $1.4 million. Basically double what we had previously known as far as Brian O'Connor's salary. So, but we'll break some of the details down, get in the weeds, go granular on that. In the meantime, if you've got questions for me, questions, comments, you want to tell me that you don't like me. A lot of folks do that too. That's fine too. You can email me at chris@augustafreepress.com.